what tools can I use to be my own advocate? That's what you're telling me. You're telling me I need to be my own advocate.
Right.
So where would I start?
Open ranks on.
Create an account.
Okay.
Do an intent to file.
Okay.
And then start doing your due diligence in reading the regulation and understanding what you're filing for, what percentage you could expect because of these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Start looking into what the symptoms are, what the condition is, what your get a diagnosis, and then do you have secondary conditions that come from that? So if you look at it, my sinusitis is secondary to my rhinitis, and my sleep apnea is secondary to my sinusitis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it may lead you to other things that need to be claimed. If you have a back condition and you have pain and numbness that radiates down your legs, that's called radiculopathy. Well, most people go, okay, I'm going to file for my back, but they don't think about this pain or numbness.
Right.
Then when they do some research on back and other conditions, it may lead them to go, you may have pain and numbness because of damage to the sciatic nerve. Oh, that's another condition I can claim.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
I wish I had a nickel for every time somebody says, yeah, I had this surgery. Okay, great. Did you ever claim your scars? I can claim scars.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are the conditions where you're compensable for scars? Well, you got to look at the reg and see.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I find with some veterans is they do not do the due diligence with reviewing the intel that's inside of the medical record. Right.
Right.
That, like, really take the time to sit down and read what the doctor is saying about you and your conditions.
98, I filed for IBS. They denied me. They denied me for the next 8 to 9 years. Finally, when I submitted some information that said I had IBS, they said that this evidence was old evidence and they weren't going to use it. I had to provide new and material evidence. So I took my records. I went to my doctor. I said, can you review this? If I don't have a leg to stand on, tell me, I'll shut up and walk away. If I do, write me a letter. I read the letter that he sent. He says, by the way, he was diagnosed in the Army for disruptive bowel disorder. Sounds an awful lot like IBS, but it's not an accepted diagnosis. So then my doctor in his letter said, oh, by the way, this disruptive bowel disorder is the same thing as IBS. Oh, and I'm treating him for it today. Now I've got a nexus from when I was diagnosed in service. But I had all these things in my records about doing GI studies and all this procedures.
Mm-hmm.
So why did they grant it back then? Well, they actually had to, and they backdated it.
Got you. Yeah.
To when I first filed for this. But again, if I didn't learn how to look at my records and see what they said and how it applies to a compensable condition, there might have been things I would not be granted for.
Right. That's a good, that right there is a very good example, because I was talking to a veteran and he's like, well, I reviewed my medical records. I really didn't understand it. So I took it to my doc and I asked him, my VA doc, and I asked him if he could write a letter about my particular conditions, because he saw online there was a YouTube influencer who's out there saying the VA doctors are not going to write a letter for you. They just won't do it. And I know that you and I had conversations about that before. Is that true?
Yes and no. Excuse me. Sinusitis. Okay, so more often than not, you will go to the VA doctor and they'll say, well, we don't really get involved in that, or we can't do that because it's a conflict of interest. This is an example of somebody, again, this is why we don't have doctors rating claims, because they don't know. Now, I happen to have a VA policy letter that I found, VA policy 1134, that states not only should they, but they can do both nexus letters and filling out the DBQs, which I'm sure somebody's had, in the background waving their hand, go, oh, like Horseshack. What's a DBQ? DBQ is the Disability Benefit Questionnaire. Same exact form that the doctor fills out when they do the exam. And you can download a copy, see what kind of questions are asked, and then you know how to tailor your statement so that you cover those questions.
Gotcha.
So, for example, one of the questions for migraines is, do you have incapacitating episodes? Well, what does that mean? Okay. You go into a dark room, you put a cloth over your face, and if somebody disturbs you, you shoot them in the face with a bazooka. Okay. You don't take 2 aspirin and go back to work. Okay, yes, I have incapacitating episodes. How often do you have them? Is it once a year, once a month, once a week, every other day? And how long does it last?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we're going to have a future video on what is acceptable evidence to the VA.
Wow.
Then the next question they ask is there a economic impact? So if you ever had to call in sick because you had a migraine, or did you have to leave because you had a migraine? Or as I had one vet who said his boss understood he got some migraines, so they have a storeroom closet with a cot in it where he can go lay down until his migraine goes away once he takes his medication. Okay, so that classifies as an economic impact. And each of those could point to a certain disability level. So say the incapacitating episodes, but no economic impact, we get you 30%. If you have the economic impact, it'll get you 50%. Again, depending on the evidence that you provide to show that this happens.
Close ranks. March.